Hello, and welcome to episode 57 of A Week in Watches, a weekly look back at news, stories, releases, and more from the watch industry. I'm your host this week, Zach Weiss, co-founder of Worn & Wound. Thanks for joining me. Last week was a crazy week for releases, so much so that on this week's episode, I actually have to go back to a few things that I just couldn't fit in episode 56. But there's been a lot of new releases for this week, including a new Seiko, so I don't know, I'm just trying to keep up. Who knew late June, early July would be quite so crazy? On my wrist this week is the Louis Erard x Konstantin Chaykin Time Eater collab. Why? Well, it's fun and relevant to this week's episode, but you'll have to wait to find out how. Ooh. This week's sponsor is Wind Up Watch Fair Chicago starting July 14th. Stay tuned for later in this episode for a deeper look into this year's fair. With over 40 brands, it's going to be a great show. Before we get to the news, please like and subscribe. There, I've said it. Now let's talk about some watches. Twinkle, twinkle, little Ming. Ming is back again with a surprisingly playful take on their 37.05 moon phase. First launched late 2021, it was the first, I believe, to feature the 37 series case, which was an evolution on their signature flared lug style, but with a narrower bezel, allowing for a wider dial opening. It was also the first model with a moon phase and a date complication, powered by the Sellita SW288-1M, which features a central mounted moon phase, allowing for a large viewing aperture. Like most or all Ming models, the first series of the 37.05 sold out quickly. But if you missed out, you're in luck, because it's back again, but with a nostalgic twist. Nicknamed the Ad Astra, which is Latin for to the stars, the 37.05 Series 2 shows off Ming's skill with lume and has a slightly different look from the former model. Previously featuring a subtle twisting texture on a dark navy blue background, the new version goes for an almost industrial anthracite gray with brushing emanating from the moon phase at 6. The star, wink wink, of the show, however, are the 5-pointed stars scattered across the dial that aren't actually on the surface. Rather, some are above, likely laser etched into the sapphire layer that contains the primary index, and others are machined through the surface. Okay, I guess those sort of are technically on the surface in a sense, but they also have a cool trick. The stars that are cut through the dial actually show the moon phase disk underneath, which also has been loomed up. So as the moon phase rotates, these stars will appear and disappear. It's a clever way to add some dynamism to the dial. The more I look at this one, the more I like it, but I'm not sure if I find the 5-pointed stars, which obviously bring glow-in-the-dark stickers to mind, a bit too cute for a watch I'd wear often. I don't know, what do you think? The Ming 37.05 Series 2 is limited to 500 units and is priced at 4,950 Swiss francs. They go on sale July 11th and will require a 50% deposit to secure. Watches will begin to be delivered fourth quarter of this year, so just a few months away. Tudor loves their fixies. Okay, you probably already read all you need or want to about these, but I'd be remiss to skip them as Tudor news tends to be big news. And, well, we didn't get any early warning on it, so I couldn't include it in last week's already too long episode. So let's talk about the new Tudor Pelagos FXD watches for Alinghi Red Bull Racing. Say that 3 times fast. As you might recall, the Pelagos FXD was introduced in 2021 and was a different spin on their technical titanium diver designed in collaboration with the Marine Nationale, and they bear the MN markings to prove it. Rather than depth and diving being the goal of the new watch, they actually were designed to be used by Navy swimmers for navigation, and thus swapped the classic dive bezel for a bi-directional countdown bezel. They also dropped the date and went for a fixed lug design, hence the FXD in the name, fixed. We haven't seen a new version since launch until now, with a collaboration with competitive sailing team Alinghi Red Bull. That said, they do update the year on the case back of the regular version annually, just FYI. But instead of one model, Tudor actually dropped 2 themed for the team, a redux of the 3-hand model and a whole new chronograph, which is the first Pelagos chronograph, and both contain another surprise as well. So the obvious features are aesthetic and meant to go along with the team's colors. The dials are dark blue with a red accent or two and have black bezels. While there are no graphic team logos per se, the index of the chapter ring has been removed from 50 to 10, which is a solid 120-degree arc, and replaced with the team name. So you kind of have to be really into the team or really into drinking Red Bull to want to wear these. Technically, I might be in that latter camp. I'm not really sure. I'll get to the chrono in a second, but first, that big surprise. Though only the second and third versions of the FXD, Tudor already swapped out the titanium midcase for one made of a matte black carbon composite, as a nod to the tech Alinghi uses in their racing boats. This should lighten the watch even further and has a dramatic look to it, especially paired with titanium hardware. Side note, it's interesting how Tudor has become a bit of a materials brand, which is not something I really thought about before. They mostly use steel, but titanium, gold, silver, bronze, ceramics, and now carbon are in their catalog as well. It's just kind of interesting. But back to the story. This is the first time we're seeing a Pelagos, whatever, chronograph, but this is Tudor. There is no way of saying if we'll see more or if this is a one-off. The case is slightly larger at 43 millimeters, but that might include the bezel overhang, and it features the MT5813 caliber, which is also found in the Black Bay chronographs. It has an elapsed 45-minute counter at 3 and an active seconds at 9. There's also a date window at 6. This is a bit of an odd watch, as it lacks lume plots at 3, 6, and 9, and also suffers from the same hand blockage issues as the Black Bay Chrono because of the large snowflake hour hand. But it does have one detail I am very happy about: pump pushers instead of screw-down pushers. I just can't stand those things. The Tudor Pelagos FXD Chrono Alinghi Racing Edition is priced at $5,075, so a bit under a Black Bay Chrono on a strap. Similarly, the non-chronograph version is priced at $3,657, which is less than the standard titanium Pelagos, which is also an interesting detail. So any Alinghi racing fans out there, what do you think of carbon mid-cases? Is this a direction you'd like to see Tudor go down? Please let us know. Okay, let's talk Wind-Up Watch Fair Chicago for a moment. After a successful weekend in San Francisco, the highly anticipated Wind-Up Watch Fair is heading back to the vibrant city of Chicago from Friday, July 14th through Sunday, July 16th, 2023. Returning to Venue West in the heart of the West Loop, we're excited to reconnect with the energy and excitement that makes the Windy City such an integral hub among our community. Now in its 9th year, Wind-Up Watch Fair has become a must-attend event for watch enthusiasts, collectors, and industry professionals. The fair showcases a wide range of watches from indie brands to well-established manufacturers, offering attendees an unparalleled chance to discover and experience a diverse selection of timepieces from brands like Citizen, Fortis, G-Shock, Oris, Zodiac, and many more. And thanks to its success in San Francisco, we're going to keep EDC Alley going in Chicago with Finch Knife Co., Giant Mouse, and even regional favorite Oak Street Bootmakers. As always, the Wind-Up Watch Fair is free and open to the public. Again, it'll be at Venue West, located at 221 North Paulina Street in the West Loop neighborhood of Chicago from July 14th through Sunday, July 16th, 2023. Visit windupwatchfair.com for the full list of participating brands. Can't wait to see you there. It's time for another speed round, only watch edition. I guess this is my new thing. Last week, I spent an awfully long time talking about the Furlan Marie Secular Perpetual Calendar for Only Watch. And rightfully so, it was very cool. But since I recorded that, the full list of 62 Only Watch creations has been announced. So I have to highlight a few. But I'll do it fast as this is a speed round after all. In the Furlan Marie section last week, just go and watch it if you haven't yet. I'm not going anywhere. I mentioned Baltic as they were the first micro brand to participate in the Only Watch auction back in 2021. Well, they are also participating in the 2023 edition, and like Furlan Marie, their entry is a perpetual calendar in what seems like a beautifully slim package. Perhaps saying Baltic entered is actually semi-inaccurate, as they've used the opportunity to launch a kind of sister brand of sorts called Baltic Experiments, which they define as their fine watchmaking studio. With that as context, the perpetual calendar features a bespoke module developed with the Maclef company that is combined with the Vaucher 5401 micro rotor movement. The result is 37 by 44 millimeters and 9.8 millimeters thick, which sounds kind of perfect. That said, the dial is a striking purple that, well, isn't for me. But then again, I'm not going to bid, so I don't really care. But just let that simmer for a second. Two micro brands that are known for affordable watches entering only watch with perpetual calendars that they developed themselves. It's just amazing stuff. Of course, the big brands didn't miss the opportunity to strut their stuff too, and a model that really caught my attention, and that of most people out there, was the Bvlgari Octo Finissimo Tourbillon Marble, which is just kind of mind-blowing. Well, stone watches aren't a new concept. They are highly uncommon and never before, to my knowledge, executed with such complexity. The Octo Finissimo case, which owes its DNA to Gerald Genta, is highly faceted and often ultra-thin, meaning tolerances are likely very tight. For this watch, they didn't carve the case out of solid marble. Rather, it's titanium with a 0.5mm thick marble shroud. And that's not just on the case. The whole bracelet and dial are marble as well. And it just looks amazing, right? It's beautiful. As if this wasn't enough, the watch is powered by the Bvlgari BVL 268 caliber, which is the world's thinnest manual tourbillon at just 1.9mm thick. So the whole watch, marble included, is only 6.9mm thick. I don't know what the billionaires out there spend their money on, but if I were one, I'd drop a stupid amount of money to have this. What do you think? The last model I want to highlight is the Konstantin Chaykin Stargazer. And not just because my favorite Rainbow song, or song with Dio as a vocalist for that matter, shares the same name, but because the independent watchmaker and AHCI member tends to go above and beyond for only watch. And this year is certainly no exception. Part of the Wristband collection, the Stargazer features 16 complications and is designed to be reversible so that the complications on the backside can be enjoyed as well. Sit back, here's a list of complications. On the dial, regular display of hours and minutes, length of day, length of night, equation of time, which is the difference between solar and sidereal time, retrograde day, signs of the zodiac, celestial map of the northern hemisphere, 24-hour display of solar time, and 24-hour display of sidereal time. Okay, that was 10. Visible from the back, continuous phase and age of the moon, 8-stage discrete moon phase, which is apparently a watchmaking first and patent pending, and I have no idea what it means exactly. Solar activity cycle and current cycle duration, sunrise and sunset azimuth indicators, also patent pending world premieres, and for good measure, a tourbillon. Yeah, it's one hell of a watch. The strap also features steel fins that with a gentle press bend the opposite direction, allowing for the strap to be curved for wearing with either side of the watch facing up without removing the strap. While they don't state the thickness of the watch, it somehow is only 42mm, which seems compact considering. I don't know, this whole thing is just madness, and that is why it's cool. Well, there are 59 other watches to check out, so I suggest heading to onlywatch.com to see them. Each page has all the info and even press releases if you want greater detail on an individual watch. All right, the final story this week, Seiko dives back into the 62 Mas, again and again. The Seiko 62 Mas holds the honor of being Seiko's first dive watch, released back in 1965. A classic skin diver design with thin bezels, squared-off lugs, and a crown at 3, it, along with other early Seiko divers, have served as the source DNA for many modern Seiko divers, as well as many recreations, from the SLA 017 to the high-beat SLA 037 to that new Astrolabe dial model to a highly limited version exclusive to Beams, an iconic store in Japan. Well, it's back again with the newly announced SJE 093, perhaps the truest recreation of the 62 Mas yet in terms of dimensions. You see, the previous closest iteration, the SLA 017, had the looks from the slate gray dial to markers which have slightly tapering lume fill, but was scaled up to about 40mm and was 14.1mm thick. The SJE 093 is 38mm and 12.5mm thick. How did Seiko achieve this new, or rather old, set of dimensions? Well, they used a new movement called the 6L37. Part of the 6L family of thin, by Seiko standards, movements, they also feature a frequency of 68,800 beats per hour versus the 21.6 of the 6R35 that is fairly common. Seiko claims to have made the 6L37 expressly for dive watches, modifying the construction and materials for greater durability and shock resistance, a requirement for their prospect dive watches. While 12.5 millimeters isn't winning any awards for being thin, it is a reasonable height for a dive watch, especially when paired with a 38 millimeter case diameter. As for the rest of the design, well, it looks just like a 62 Mas, but with updated dial text to reflect a higher depth rating and a movement with more jewels. As such, well, it looks great. The 62 Mas and its offspring, including the SBB 149 and its ilk, are all wonderful looking, classically styled dive watches. Of course, this is going to be a bit of a controversial release as it sort of outdoes the SLA 017 of what that watch was supposed to achieve. That watch did use an 8L movement, which likely has its fans, but that was a very limited edition as well in terms of Seiko, at 2,000 units. So for those who missed out, there is another opportunity for a 62 Mas in the SJE 093. As for the price, well, it's firmly in Seiko's higher end SLA bracket at 3,700 euros, USD pricing not available yet, which is a lot, no way around it, especially with Tudor making something like the Black Bay 54 at the same price with a higher spec movement. But hey, if a modern 62 Mas is the watch you've been looking for, I don't think you're going to get closer in looks and scale than this. The SJE 093 is limited to 1,965 pieces and will be available starting in August. And that's it for week 57. Please give us a like and subscribe, it means a lot. We hope to see you at Wind Up Watch Fair Chicago in, just a few days. All the deets are available at windupwatchfair.com. And of course, visit Worn and Wound Daily for more watch news, reviews, podcast videos, and more. I'll see you next time.